festival. You are listening to SGFR, podcast radio for the festival. Now broadcasting highlights and top picks, your tasty, tantalizing tease for this coming year.
Great. As we do the next one of these recordings, it is a joy to invite Rob to join us. And Rob, we've just been talking to David about co-op games, and I know he's not one for social deductions, which is why it's kind of poetic delight to have you in the interview suite with us. I met you the first year with Cast, and you agreed to come on the show and talk about Werewolf. And actually, as I recall, give us tips on how to win the game, little cheat codes. Anyway, that's my endearing memory. Then that's kind of serves as a kind of my introduction to you, Rob. How does that do? Does that fit?
Thank you. Well, thanks. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I can't even. I remember you asking me for sort of tips and things on how to win it, and I honestly can't remember what I told you because it was years ago. But I think probably it was something like sort of, you think of an honest character that you can inhabit and pretend to be it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we haven't really explained. Do we need to explain what werewolf is before we even begin with things like that?
I suppose we could. It really is because a lot of time has passed by then, and I know you have been a regular attender of the festival, which is part of why I'm actually so happy that you've been able to join us here. And if you want to talk about Werewolf, then yes, let's, yes.
Maybe just in case you should say what a social deduction game is, in case people listening have no idea.
Okay. Well, firstly, thank you for having me on for a start.
Rob, just talk about what a game is as well.
Yeah, James, you're so traditional. You care about our listener. That's so sweet.
Right. At what level should I start? Well, yeah, I suppose I should introduce myself a little bit actually to begin with. I'm actually a careers advisor by background. I was working at the University of Brighton back in 2014, and I had like a kind of mentoring program I was running. So students, sort of trying to help them to develop by getting the mentors from industry, really. And we had a kind of team day together, doing various activities, one of which was with a guy who taught people how to do public speaking, and he got the students to do 1-minute talks on something that interested them. One of them was, some of you may know, some of you may not, but one of them was Christina, who used to come to the festival. She's got a baby now, so she's not come recently, but she did this talk on Werewolf, and it kind of blew my mind because I'd never heard of anything like it, and it just sounded so bizarre. But essentially, Werewolf is a social deduction game. It is like, things like Mafia, Blood on the Clock Tower, if you know those kind of things. But essentially, you're a group of people. You have a moderator who sort of referees the game and generally looks after everything. But it's not really a role-playing game. You are given a role in the game, but you're somebody in a kind of medieval village that's got a werewolf infestation. You might just be an ordinary farmer or something like that doesn't really do anything too interesting, except has to try and help the village to work out who the werewolves are. And rather like the Traitors on television, which copied it, to be honest, vote the werewolves out of the game. Meanwhile, because the game is in day and night phases, the day phases everyone has their eyes open. In the night phases, nearly everyone has their eyes shut, but the moderator will ask somebody to, in some particular role, to open their eyes and do a certain thing. In the case of the werewolves' turn in the night, they're trying to choose someone to kill. So the villagers are gradually being whittled down by the werewolves, while the villagers are also trying to burn the werewolves at the stake each day, they frequently get it wrong, of course. So it's all trying to, it's all kind of detective work. If you're on the village side, you're trying to work out who the werewolves are, and sometimes there are other roles that have, like we were saying about other games. Sometimes people have their own agenda anyway. If you're on the werewolf side, you're trying to work out what's the sensible order in which to kill off the villagers so that you get away with it. And I'd never come across anything like this. As a careers advisor, I have to work with a lot of people and try and help them. So Werewolf is great because it just brings out my inner sociopath, and I can actually go, I can just murder people and get, if possible, get away with it. So it's quite a refreshing thing to do, really. But of course, frequently you're on the village side, so you're on the good guys side as well. But yeah, it's one of those sort of real think on your feet kind of games, and no two games are ever the same. The moderator can make sure of that by bringing different roles into it anyway. And in any case, it's just never going to develop the same way. You get your role at random. You just don't know how it's all going to play out. So yeah, I've kind of like that. I've never been a Blood on the Clocktail fan myself, actually. I find actually Werewolf, where people get eliminated from the game, so everyone's not still in it at the end. There's a sort of a bit more of a finality to it, and the people who are out of the game can still win with their faction that they're with anyway. They can also peer over the moderator's shoulder and see who, what all the roles were, and then laugh at the village imploding on itself, as the game goes on. So yeah, I've always kind of preferred it to Blood on the Clocktail. Also, Blood on the Clocktail, you can have private conversations, whereas in Werewolf, the idea is all the conversation goes on in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, Werewolf, that was kind of where I came in. I started joining the Brighton Werewolf group that Simon, who runs the festival, was part of at the time. And then after about, it was that first summer actually that I was in it, 2014. Somebody said, why don't we play some Werewolf around a campfire, a campsite? A few of us thought it was a good idea. 13 of us went to Wilderness Wood, where we used to have the festival years later. Sat around a campfire, played loads of Werewolf till about 3 a.m. Some of us stayed and camped over. I didn't. I took a few people home and went home, but that was where it all began, really. The next year, groups were springing up elsewhere. I'd moved to London with a guy called Gotcha, a Turkish fella. He's still sometimes you see at the festival. He and I sort of set up the London Werewolf group. The Bristol one had formed. The Oxford one had already formed. And so the 2015, Simon had the idea of why don't we have a kind of festival in Hampshire. That was in those that remember that was in sort of gigantic kind of open field virtually. There were campfires, there were some toilets, there wasn't much else there at all. But about 50 of us probably from various groups, Bristol, Oxford, London, Brighton. We all got together. The year after that, we went back to Wilderness Wood, where it had all begun. And we've had some changes of venue since then. But here we are, sort of 10 years on from that Hampshire one. Really going strong. And Simon and I are the only ever presents, really. I'll miss the camp out this year because I won't be able to get to that. So that'll be kind of the first of the events that I'll have missed. But yeah, I can kind of recollect all of them so far. And the other thing that sort of came out of it was it got me all into board games as well. It took me a bit longer to sort of progress from Werewolf to board games, but I joined when I moved up to Norwich. I live in Norfolk nowadays. Joined a board games group up there, and I've finally managed to get a Werewolf group going in Norwich as well now.
You've been doing this for more than 10 years, by the sounds of it. What would you say, if challenged, what would you say makes it so enduring, makes it such a game that you keep coming back to? Is it
Werewolf.
just your bloodlust, your kind of silent psychopathic urge to kill people, or though you may, if you want to retract that, that's absolutely fine. I've met you. I think you're a really lovely chap and would never have thought you'd harm anyone. But
that's why you'd be a terrible detective, Andy.
It's I guess it's that thing of, you always have to think on your feet in Werewolf, really. There is, you never really know where it's going to go, because you never know what other people are going to say or how they're going to behave. So you're always trying to work stuff out. It always keeps your mind moving. And if you moderate a game of Werewolf, Simon taught me to moderate. Been doing that, kind of 10 years. I do a lot of the beginner Werewolf games, moderate those now at the festival. The thing about moderating is, again, it's interesting, because you've got to try and create a game, work out which roles to put into the game, so it will be reasonably balanced, and one side won't just easily slaughter the other. If you can get it down to like the last 3 players, and there's still 3 people sitting there thinking, well, certainly one of them is still thinking, who do I trust? Then you've really achieved what you want to achieve, and that's a kind of an art form in itself, and I love that about it too.
What is, I've got to ask this question, what is, in your experience, the most wildest, out there, unexpected behavior from a fellow player that you've come across?
Oh dear. Well, definitely the undisputed champion of that would be, and this was just unfortunate, actually. We one of the people on that very first time round the campfire was one of our, sort of players we used to have in the Brighton group, a fella called Luke. Not Luke, who still comes to the festival, but another Luke. And he's dyslexic, poor fella, and he had misread the card that he'd got. So he was the medium, who's like one of the more powerful village players, and can investigate people once they're dead and out of the game, and see if they have any kind of powers that will help, to see if they're corrupt, basically, and see if they're likely to be on the side of the wolves or not. So that was his role. He'd misread the card that said medium as madman, and the madman is basically just this kind of loony character who's trying to get himself killed by the wolves. So he played this game absolutely, really, really eccentrically. Nobody could fathom what he was or what he was doing. And it was only really sort of, once the whole thing was over, that we got to the bottom of what he was up to.
Was he just really confused why he kept getting woken up in the night?
The
mod has to wake the medium up and say, "Who do you want to check?" Right?
Yeah.
He must have just been like, "I don't know, I'm mad."
Well, apparently, I didn't know. I was just playing. I wasn't moderating, but apparently the moderator had to keep waking him up, and he would just sort of shrug and point at somebody and things, and he couldn't understand why.
Did he survive? Was he on the winning team?
He definitely wasn't on the winning team. Unsurprisingly, the Werewolves did rather well out of that. But
Yes.
did he survive? I can't remember. I think he might have eventually got killed by his own villagers. Actually, it's a long time ago. That's 10 years ago.
Were they putting him out of his misery, poor chap?
I think they were putting him out of their misery predominantly. But yeah, that was a big. Yes, I was on the werewolf side for that one. Yeah, I won that one. I remember now. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, a lot of help from Luke there, I must say.
Isn't there a co-op element to the way you play Werewolf, because of the team side of it, and because of the negotiation, because of the working together? Or does it become backstabbing, paranoid central?
Oh, it depends who you're with, I think. But there are. I think, if you're on the Wolf team, you do have to kind of work together, and there's a lot of kind of, because you can't talk, because you give away, who you were, so you've got to kind of wave at each other and point at people you think you should kill, and generally make faces at each other if you think it's a really bad idea, and all that kind of stuff. So there is that element of teamwork there. With the village, I think that's another of those things that I like with the village. You're trying to build a team with people that you can't entirely trust. So it's trying to work out, who really is likely to be on your side from what you know from the various elements of the game, which would take too long to explain right now, but trying to, work out, who can you really trust, form that sort of small circle of trust to begin with, and gradually see who you can let into it and who you still need to, be a bit skeptical about, really. So yeah, there is teamwork, but there's more to it than that. You can never be sure.
Yeah, the deduction element of it and so on. I've played 2 games, and one of them I played whilst doing a recording, and I got to admit it was pretty exciting, even though I was just a lowly villager. And for some reason or another, although I consider myself to be pretty trustworthy, the villagers burnt me to a crisp. It was quite painful.
Yeah, you have to get used to that kind of thing happening.
We have been through this, though. You were muttering into a microphone very suspiciously.
I've only ever played one big game of Werewolf before, and I had a genuinely very awful time, which is why I've been quite quiet for this one. And so I've never played it again.
Aww. I think it really can depend on the group, though. If you all come at it with the same sense of humour or the same sense of seriousness, then it works. If you've got a mixed match, then sometimes you can have those experiences. But
Yeah, I mean, weirdly, I
sometimes it's just not your
weirdly,
game.
I was getting more bullied by the mod than anyone else. It was very strange.
That was probably me.
I remember who it was. It was definitely not you, my friend. Don't worry.
Oh,
Thank you.
I was going to say, as a way of closing this interview, Rob, is there any one thing you could say to someone like James that could lure him back into playing Werewolf?
Probably, if you're at the festival, I always run the novice games because I actually like the sort of bare bones kind of version with the simplest characters. I don't mind bringing in fancy ones as well. I can do it, but I'm not like some people just love all that complication. I don't mind it. I'd say, if you can find me at the festival, see if you can come in on one of the beginner games and see if maybe you can learn to love it after all. If you can't, no problem, and there's plenty of other games out there, but yeah, sometimes get the right group and just sort of deal with it at the right level, and you might be okay. First game I ever played, I was Alpha Wolf, so I was like sort of chief baddie. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was a pretty complicated game. There was other roles like criminals in there and things. I understood about a third of what I was supposed to be doing, but I still kind of enjoyed it enough to want to play again. So yeah, maybe just try a basic one, see if it's for you, and if it really doesn't float your boat, well, no problem. The festival's a big place, and there's lots else you can do.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
I really respect you, Rob, for going. Look, if you want to have a good game, find me. It'll be a good game.
And if not, then you can stick in your world of sad, pathetic delusion. Not a problem at all.
Wait, I think Andy, were you the mod, Andy?
It might have been me. Rob, thank you very much.
No, I didn't mean to big myself up as a mod. All I really meant was that I'll generally try and make it a fairly gentle experience for anyone who's new.
What can I say, Rob? Thank you very much. Go find a game of Werewolf with Rob and have lots of fun.
You've been listening to SGFR, the podcast radio channel for the Strange Games Festival.
This season's hosts have been James, Laura, Andy and Craig.
And if you'd like to come on the show, message us on the festival radio channel on the Strange Games Festival Discord server.